Hello, hello, hello. My name is Caroline. I go by she, her pronouns. Welcome to my new bedroom and welcome back to my channel. Yay! Today, I am trying something new, as you can tell by the title and description and thumbnail and everything of this video, and I'm very excited. I've been wanting to dabble in the political, social, mental health, etc. commentary side of YouTube for a while, and with the help of my girlfriend, Kath, who, if you know this channel, you know and love, I came up with the script to this video, and today I'm going to be talking about the importance of lesbian representation in television specifically. So let's jump in. I, much like the rest of the internet, just watched Stranger Things in totality. I am so happy that I rekindled my love for that show. I hadn't seen seasons 2, 3, and of course 4, and I finally did. I rewatched it. I rewatched the first season and watched the others for the first time, and it was so fun, and I was inspired by the Stranger Things legend Robin, who is everyone's favorite nepotism baby, except for you, Drew Barrymore, and Dakota Johnson. Special place in my heart. Maya Hawke. So Robin, if you don't know, is a lesbian character who is present in the show that is otherwise devoid of LGBTQ characters, except for you, Will, Slade. And I cannot tell you how happy I was when it was revealed to us that Robin is a lesbian, has been a lesbian, and will always be a lesbian. Obviously, I'm going to be happy regardless if a character comes out as a lesbian in the show, because representation is great. It matters, and it's fun to identify with characters. See a character with a similar identity as you, and to see them take up space in television, because that's so important. We'll touch on more why later. But what made me so happy about Robin specifically in this moment is that her sexuality was non-negotiable. She is not attracted to men or Steve, etc., and that was respected and final when she came out to him. It was just so refreshing. I feel like I haven't seen that in a show, let alone a teen show, in a while. And also, her entire character was not based on her coming out narrative. And also, I like her because she's obviously a neurodivergent queen and has ADHD, and she's kind of annoying sometimes, but I feel her because I feel I am also annoying sometimes. So it was just great. But you may be wondering, Caroline, is that really such a rarity? People are queer all the time in shows. Why is Robin so important? And to that, my dear friend, I will say, it really is a rarity to find dynamic lesbian representation. And I'm only talking about lesbians specifically in this show, in this episode, in this YouTube video. Some of y'all might be real mad at me, but this must be said. It is okay for non-men to not center their lives around men. It is okay and should be uplifted for lesbians to be lesbians, for gay non-men characters to not be interested in men, period. And unfortunately, it is rare that we as a community, lesbian community, get true bona fide representation that is not in a fluid, male-gazy, or non-stereotypical way, or that is not in a stereotypical way. Also, just a side note, when I don't see lesbians in a show, I just assume most characters are lesbians. Like, does anyone else relate? So, to start off, I'm going to just define the term lesbian for y'all so you don't get it twisted. Lesbianism is a sexuality, community, political identity even, and some may even say a gender, that is male exclusionary, and that's probably the most important part. I know it's been debated in certain circles on the internet, but this is truth. A lesbian is basically synonymous with non-men loving non-men, lesbians of all types, but it is a male exclusionary sexuality and identity. With this, because it must be said, I would like to disclaim that queer characters of any nature are all important to be represented, and I'm thrilled when a character can just exist for being part of the LGBTQ plus community. Our stories and our identities should take up space in storytelling and media in all ways. But this video is only touching on the importance of lesbian representation because I am a lesbian. This is something I am passionate about, and this is something that I feel like I have competence and capability in talking about. Also, yes, I am reading my script off my little iPad because I didn't memorize this stuff. This is not 10th grade Little Mermaid rehearsal. So don't mind me. This is the first time I've really scripted a video for this channel, and I'm very excited. Let's jump into chapter 1, the bad. Let's establish what we do not like to see and why. Glee's Santana and Brittany, Emily and Allison from Pretty Little Liars, Cheryl and Tony from Riverdale. It's Riverdale, excuse me for that. And even sometimes characters from The L Word. What do these lesbian characters all have in common? Well, they and the way they show up in the show are based and centered and catered to the male gaze. It's good to see that the locking of lips between my faves, Selma Blair and Sarah Michelle Gellar, was a gay awakening that many young lesbians needed and resonated with in the 90s and 2000s. But was the purpose of this scene to show gay women being gay women, or was it to show the beauty and the luster that is the male gaze's view of lesbian and feminine sexuality? Further, on Pretty Little Liars, Emma Wilkes and Jay Patel for The Boar write, "The majority of Emily's plot lines focus on her interactions with girls. Her relationship with Allison, whilst featuring good chemistry, feels rather forced in the later seasons of the show, and Allison's sexuality is never explored in any depth. The only girl she shows any interest in is Emily, which to an extent makes their pairing feel ingenuine or generated for fan service." Lesbians and other queer characters often get cast into these really male-gazy and just kind of dehumanizing sexual lenses, and that is not what we see. It affects the real life, it affects the material realities of lesbians and queer women and queer women relationships, lesbian relationships, and it genuinely just leaves the viewer, if they are not lesbian, feeling ignorant about what lesbianism really is and what a relationship or a romantic experience, etc., looks like for lesbians. We also have the burying your gaze trope, or the gay death sentence, in which queer characters are seen on TV, but they are later killed off, thus stripping the show of any queer representation, lesbian representation specifically. This specifically affects lesbian characters. For example, Lexa from The 100, Denise from The Walking Dead, Willow and Tara in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The trope is also tied to tokenization. We can have queerness, but not too much. We can have representation, but only for a little while, until a queer death is necessary to trim the edges of caste bloat or advance the plot of a straight character. We can have one character or so, as a treat. And of course, I need to mention in this portion the intersection here. It also happens with Black LGBTQ characters, Asian characters, and just minority characters in general, Latino characters, etc., regardless of sexuality. I mean, TV and casts that you can just see, it's just so evidently and obviously majority white. That is an issue in and of itself that definitely intersects with the issue of lack of LGBTQ plus people and lesbians on the silver screen. Through it all, even when we do have LGBTQ plus representation or lesbian representation specifically, it is mostly the white gay people we are seeing. We're seeing that monolithic view in just broad terms of LGBTQ plus people. We're seeing the camp gay men, the white men, the Kurt Hummels, if you will, the predatory gay men. And this is stripping gay men, lesbians, and the LGBTQ plus people of dynamicism and just stories and the space that they deserve. I want to throw in some quotes from this great Study Breaks article I read about lesbian representation. Cleo Simone Scott, author of the article, says, quote, "A report by the BBC, which focused on LGBTQ people, found that lesbian women were relatively invisible compared to the level of coverage of gay men. Gay men seem to be so much better represented than lesbians. Gay male representation is improving, although camp gay men are still the norm, especially in comedy scenarios." Scott quotes Tasha Anderson from the article, "Why the Media Still Doesn't Get Lesbianism Right," which speaks on stereotypical representation. Quote, "More often than not, she fits the lipstick lesbian trope. She's femme, traditionally attractive, and hypersexualized. Sometimes she takes a heterosexual relationship out for a spin, even though she's not bisexual. This undermines lesbians and makes lesbianism seem like a flippant lifestyle choice, that rather than simply an intrinsic part of who they are." Scott continues, "Even trailblazing shows like The L Word hypersexualize lesbians and use predictable and stereotypical tropes in portraying the characters. Anderson notes that the male gaze is prominent in shows that hypersexualize lesbians." And this is just something that happens all the time, and it can get very dehumanizing, as I mentioned before, and as I will continue to mention throughout the show. So, a movie example, sorry for this video is about TV, but the movie Giggly, I don't know, but it showcases J-Lo as a lesbian who eventually falls for a man, which perpetuates this aforementioned idea. Further, Queer as Folk, which granted is still on my watch list of shows and I haven't seen it, is also using stereotypical lesbian tropes. The article by GNC, linked below in the description, states that the character Lindsay, who is, from what I gather, a self-proclaimed lesbian, she falls for and sleeps for a man throughout the course of the show. Also, this man that she falls for is also the biological father of her and her girlfriend's children. whack dynamic. And note that she is a lesbian in the show. As far as I know, she is called a lesbian, and she is obsessed with and falls for this man. And Lindsay's partner is stereotyped also as one of those mean and angry lesbians that we see all the time, which is also kind of like lesbians always have to be edgy in shows. I'm looking at Theo from Haunting of Hill House. So it's kind of disappointing. I do love a mean woman though, like awesome, but again, it is a stereotype. Also, mind the ray of sun coming in. Lighting's hard. But that pretty much wraps up the bad. Let's go into the good. Let's get some levity, why don't we? So chapter 2, the good. I already mentioned the unadulterated pride I felt when I saw Robin, and that she was a firm lesbian and that she turned down Steve without an ounce of regret. But yeah, let's talk about some other great lesbians in television. So I'm going to talk about lesbians that I've seen in television, and then I'm going to talk about some lesbians that are on my watch list. So what makes these lesbian characters I'm about to mention so great is that they can just exist. They are lesbian, that is part of their identity and pride, but they are also dynamic, imperfect, strong, human, integral to the plot, not just there to serve the straight characters, not just there to be fan service, not just there to be male gaze. They are important, badass, cool, la 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 la. So to start on that note, Midnight Mass has Miss Dr. Queen Sarah, who basically is the reason that the good guys in Midnight Mass had any progress. Spoiler alert for some of these, by the way. But she is a powerful, amazing, cute, autumnal, cozy, fashion, smart doctor who goes on little dates with ladies at her culty islands festivals. Like, I just loved her so much. I wanted more Sarah. But when she was on screen, she was fantastic. I just loved it. I also have to mention my L-word girlies because this show did make me. So Bet, Shane, Dana, Alice, Tina, also the people from Generation Q I have yet to see. So I wish that more of them were played by lesbians, but sue me. I loved them. I'd watch Jennifer Beals act as a lesbian any day. Also, Poussey and all of the others from Orange is the New Black. You could say certain things about the portrayal of lesbianism, but I was talking to my girlfriend Kath, and she was just telling me how important it was for her as a young teen to see characters like that, lesbian characters just living. Also, really dynamic show. It's due for a rewatch. I haven't watched it since I was like 15, but yes. I have to say Tara/Tony from True Blood. I just think that was kind of a slay. I don't know. I would say that the other evil vampire girly in the show was like also a slay, but she was like definitely very male gazy, and I don't know, but she was also kind of cool, like evil vampire. I don't know, it was kind of cool, but male gazy nonetheless. But Tara, I'm gonna say Tara. True Blood is not immune from the Kiss episode though. Yikes. More coming on the Kiss episode in the neutral chapter. But also Villanelle and Sandra Oh. Once these two girlies cracked out of the compet, and for Villanelle it was like she was only with men because she was manipulating men for murderous gain. I loved these. I love these little characters. I still have to finish the series, so don't come for me. But yeah. Hey guys, I'm editing with my girlfriend Kath, and I forgot Ratched. My favorite show. Literally, we watched it together. I'm so grateful. It was so cute. Extra points for Cynthia Nixon being emotional at the gay bar. It was so good. And I was like looking at this Red Tide poster, and I was like, what the fuck? I forgot. Also, okay, that's TV. I was gonna say the new Scream, that lesbian like icon in the new Scream movie was like cool. But no, anything Sarah Paulson's in, any AHS that she's in, any lesbians in AHS, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to rewatch to see if they're male gazy. But Ratched was fantastic. Lesbian rep, loved it. It does do the coming out trope, but in a deep way, just like Danny, I guess, in Bly Manor. I don't know. Yeah. Some honorable mentions from shows that are on my watch list, but I've heard great things about. Dairy Girls. Character Claire is lesbian. Denise in Master of None, more on her later. Sex Education, Ola and Lily. Nina and Dre in The Chai. And Dickinson, which I've been dying to watch because Ivy by Taylor Swift is one of the best lesbian anthems of all time. So that's pretty much just a quick rundown of good character representation. Let's get into the neutral, or where we have room for improvement. Dream a little dream of me. So I already discussed that when we do see lesbians, we see a dichotomy, or maybe for the purposes of my examples that I'll be using, a trichotomy. We either see a one-dimensional trope that is there to sexualize lesbian relationships and storylines and characters. Sometimes these moments or characters, etc., don't even have a storyline. They're literally fan service. Or two, we see a coming out story, which can be heartwarming, empowering, and necessary in moderation, of course. Or we see actual great representation, where lesbian characters can be lesbians without the queer pain narrative, or their sexuality being the only character trait. So let's dig in about those trichotomies and where we could improve. In an article by the New York Times, also linked below, Maya Salam writes about how lesbianism, or in this sense, more like gay moments, were used to propel ratings when lesbianism was first making appearances on television. I'm including this in the neutral section of this video because it's like, there are lesbians there, and this was when TV was first showing it, so it's something that still happens and is not okay, but it's neutral because I do think that it propelled growth for lesbians on television. But we still do not like to see lesbians used for the wow or the gag, if you will. Let me explain. So I present to you the Kiss episode, a ratings gimmick that eventually, slowly, painstakingly, inch by inch, and for maybe more harm than it's worth, introduced lesbian kisses to primetime audiences. Here is a little screen grab from the article about the Kiss episode. LA Law, a show from the 80s, 90s, went on to win a GLAAD award for what the organization called a historic smooch between two lawyer characters. That kiss is widely regarded as the first kiss between two women on a major network. Green later told After Ellen, a lesbian pop culture website, that the kiss had been included for ratings and that there had never been a plan to explore the relationship. Thus began a decade of lesbian kiss episodes, which included kisses between teenage girls on picket fences, etc., 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 on Ally McBeal, etc. In 1994, Roseanne Barr and Mariel Hemingway kissed on Roseanne, one of the first shows to introduce a recurring bisexual character, Nancy Bartlett. ABC didn't want to air the episode, but Barr threatened to take her sitcom to another network, so ABC aired it, with a parental advisory added, of course. God forbid. 30 million viewers turned in. In 2005, the Times TV critic Virginia Heffernan called some of these same-sex kisses perfect sweep stunts, and I really hate this. She says, they offer something for everyone, she wrote, from advocacy groups looking for role models to indignation-seeking conservatives, from goggle-eyed male viewers to progressive female ones. And we still see this fanfare or lack thereof or whatever for any crumb of representation or any good representation that we get for lesbian characters, etc., etc. And that is frustrating, and it's come a long way in some respects, but as I've talked about, there are still many issues, and this needs work. It just sucks that this was used for ratings, that, again, it was the male gaze, it was the crumb of representation, and it was just like the inch by inch, the painstaking inch. Of course, people who were actors and lesbians on TV, lesbian actors too, making these waves is super important. But it just sucks that this was such a gimmick for so long. Love her or hate her, luckily Ellen did do some good for the movement. I know that when she was on Oprah's show in 2011 or so, it did a lot for me. I was like, what the fuck, gay women? Sent me down a spiral that makes so much sense in retrospect. Shout out them, even though they're two of like the worst billionaire women of all time. But anyway, Ellen's show did do a lot for representation on TV, and confusing that Laura Dern isn't a lesbian, but we'll let that one slide for now. Second, let's move on to the coming out story. I loved seeing Little Miss Danny become her lesbian self in The Haunting of Bly Manor, just as much as the next Mike Flanagan fan. Seriously, I can't wait to see which lesbian character he includes in his Edgar Allan Poe series that's upcoming, even though I don't think that's his representation's always the best. And we need, like, I don't know, we need lesbians to write lesbian characters. But regardless, I loved seeing her coming out story. I thought it was thoughtful, beautiful, full of rich trauma and all that jazz. But I also I want to see more. I think the coming out narrative can be great, as I said, in moderation. I'm moving a little forward because the light was getting a little too much. But it leaves much to be desired as well. If we just see lesbians in a dynamic lens more, and not only the coming out narratives, it will show people the realities of being gay and being a lesbian, if that makes sense. So for me specifically, this isn't for everyone, of course, but for me specifically, speaking on my own micro experience, I was more compelled by shows like The L Word or like Villanelle and Killing Eve when I was coming out to myself, because it wasn't like a Love Simon, like feel good, yes, like I'm coming out, la la la. And I know that many people need that, but what really helped me was just seeing gay women live their lives and have their community and go through their daily struggles as humans. And I saw myself in that, I saw myself, and I feel like that really helped me. And it wasn't in like a coming out narrative, whatever plot. That's important, of course, but I think we've established that a lot in television, and I am here advocating for dynamic narratives. I hope I make sense. Third, this is going along with the point I just made, but I'm just saying this for organizational and linear respect. But we just need more lesbian characters where queerness is not the only character trait. I already talked about those examples, etc., yada, yada, yada. Just mentioning this to make a point, I guess. And finally, for this section, I touched on this before, intersectionality is also so important. We need more lesbians of color. We need more neurodivergent lesbians in general, neurodivergent people in general. We need more gender non-conforming lesbians, etc., etc. We need more butch lesbians. We need more masc, femme, anywhere in between, non-binary, trans lesbians. We need a spectrum of lesbians. Scott of Study Breaks continues, of course, there have been great shows such as Orange is the New Black, Carrie here, and I will personally add Lena Waithe's Emmy-winning Thanksgiving episode for Aziz Ansari's Master of None, which depict numerous queer women. However, even in a show as diverse as OITNB, there's still a limited number of black lesbians, which present the problem of white homosexuality being the norm. Yes, I already touched on that, but it just goes to show we still see a monolithic view of lesbians, queerness, etc. We need lesbians across all facets of life, and that's just really important. And finally, chapter 4, why representation matters. From now on, there'll be a change in me. 1. Representation matters for lesbians, or people who have not come out to themselves or to others yet, who are LGBTQ+, or of course lesbians. When I watched The L Word, as I said, I saw myself. When I saw Villanelle being a lesbian, I saw myself, as crazy and toxic as she may be. I was 19, 20 years old. How did I not see myself in all of these characters before? I can blame compet for a lot of that. A lot of those moments were compet and etc., that I've since worked through, but also the lack of representation, lack of dynamic representation. Can I go on? I think that I've made myself clear on that point, so we can move on to representation also matters for lesbian actors. It's so important to see films produced, written, directed, created, show ran, acted, voiced, scored, what have you, by the people who the stories are about. We don't want to see like blue is the warmest color. That's literally just straight men being like disgusting. That's why I recommend these movies, of course. Say what you will about Portrait of a Lady on Fire, I sobbed. So yeah, I just need to also stress that a lot of characters that I've mentioned are not lesbians playing lesbians, and that's so important, as we see. 2, representation also matters for non-lesbians. It is important that non-lesbians, even people in the queer community, see lesbians being lesbians, so people can see, understand, respect, uplift lesbian characters, but also lesbians in general, outside of the TV show. As I mentioned before, otherwise, they are seeing the male gazy, sexually fluid, turned straight, and one-dimensional views and versions of lesbian characters and translating that to their everyday life and the way that they treat lesbians, gay women, people in homosexual presenting relationships, if you will. These ignorant and uninformed, and of course lesbophobic views of lesbians affect the material realities of lesbians across the board, let alone lesbians of color and lesbians with other intersecting minority experiences and identities. This is why this matters. And I could go on, but maybe I'll save that for another video if you guys want a little rundown on how this literally affects the lives of lesbians. My iPad just died, so my audio may have changed because I'm using that as a microphone and still filming on my phone until I can have money to buy a camera and a microphone. But I will end this video on some good news. Lesbian representation is increasing, and the internet, people like you watching this, and strong-ass lesbians, and people who make stories and narratives that are great about lesbians are advocating for and telling the stories of dynamic lesbian characters, and it gives me hope. And I really hope that hopefully this video made sense. It was kind of me rambling for a long time, but it's something I'm really passionate about. If you took a sip of water every time I said lesbian, I hope that you're really hydrated right now. So you're welcome for that. And yeah, please let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below. If you'd like to see more commentary videos from me, tell me what you'd like to see, etc. I had fun writing this script, and I would like to make them a little bit more dynamic. Also, take a sip of water every time I said dynamic in this video. And I just like to make them better and better. So give me suggestions, constructive criticism, comments, etc. below. And I will end this video with a huge thank you. If you made it all the way to the end, if you only watched a couple minutes, let me know. I'm gonna pop a list up now of some TV shows and even movies that give fun and heartwarming and uplifting and tough and gritty, whatever, dynamic lesbian representation. So check those out. Let me know what you thought. That's not even including books. This is literally just movie and TVs. Who am I? My channel is changing. Whatever. My voice is shot now. I'm gonna go have a water and take a sip every time I say the word lesbian, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your Pride Month. Love you. Come to me, my melancholy baby. Cuddle up and